Sir, I was looking at your list of publications and I noticed that you have produced over 60 works.
Really?
Yes, and there are over 10 joint works.
Good.
So the latest work came this year on the political biography of Maharaja Ripudaman Singh. So, what has been your experience of doing, of preparing joint works or producing joint works?
Uh, the first thing I can think of is that every joint work arose out of a particular situation. If I am thinking of the yogis of Jakvar, the study of those documents, and the Vaishnavas of Pandori, another set, then Dr. Goswami had acquired those documents. And he approached me. And I thought it was a good idea. And therefore we decided to work together. And it was a great pleasure working with Dr. Goswami. He had a deep interest in the subject. And we could sit together for half an hour, a full hour, in order to decipher a single word. It would take that much of time, several possibilities. We think, consult the dictionary and see if it really fits in. So then the work got divided automatically into two parts. Part one, the history of the institution, the yogis of Jakvar, the mutt of the yogis. And the second part, what is the significance of these documents, which was my concern very largely, because the significance was to be seen in the context of Indian history and medieval Indian history, which was supposed to be the area in which I was interested. So
it was complementary.
Complementary in the sense that the two parts came together. But it was a very happy sort of collaboration. I learned a lot from Dr. Goswami and also from the close study of these documents. I felt very happy about that. And as I said earlier, we made a mistake about the yogis of Jakvar. We did not publish all the documents. The Sikh part, the orders of the Sikh rulers were not included, which was very unfortunate. Later on, we couldn't get those documents.
There are two works on translations, one with Professor Banga and the other with Professor Irfan Habib.
Three rather. Civil and military affairs also.
Three.
The work which I did with Professor Banga, that is not like the earlier work, that is complementary, one part, the other part. We are both interested in the same area. And we work together, discuss things and come to some sort of understanding. So then one of us can write, the other can revise or read.
I was, so this particular work, I mean, of course, this is historical writings on the Sikhs, Western enterprise and Indian response, which came out, which covers the period from 1784 to 2011, and it came out in 2012. I regard this in one sense a continuation and in fact an expansion of your work on British historians of medieval India.
This is not only about the British, but also about the Indian historians.
Yeah, right. This is
which is not there in the earlier work.
So they have come of age.
And also I am suggesting that the Indian historians are writing in response to what has been written by the British. Therefore they are trying to, from their viewpoint, to correct or to reiterate whatever the position may be, but with reference to, with response to what the British had written. And eventually becoming sort of independent of that what we can say about the controversy of the 80s, 90s is that it's a revolt of the traditional Sikh historians against the West.
I think this is very well put. Revolt.
It is.
Mhm. Okay. Right. So this work, Master Tara Singh in Indian History, its subtitle is Colonialism, Nationalism and the Politics of Sikh Identity. Seems to be in some ways a culmination of your earlier work on Sikh identity, your understanding of colonialism as well, and in many ways it's a breakthrough in our understanding of Master Tara Singh, who has been a very controversial subject. So, what would you like to say about this work? It took you some years to complete it, and this is the
It took me 6 years to
6
write,
years, yes.
and this was made possible by the Punjabi University at Patiala. There were a few scholars, few historians who thought that Master Tara Singh has not been treated well by the historians, so they persuaded me to accept this idea that a biography of Master Tara Singh was desirable, was needed. So then the Vice Chancellor, Punjabi University, he sort of offered to sponsor this study, finding some way out, and I was invited to the university as a professor of eminence. The understanding was that I would work on this project, which I did. They did not think it would take such a long time, but then my concern, my interest went on increasing, and I wanted to do, to satisfy myself that I have written what I could and not left the study halfway somewhere. What I discovered was that this was known that Master Tara Singh remained one of the topmost leaders or the topmost leader of the Sikhs for 40 years. 4 decades is a long time, and therefore he needed a kind of work which did justice to what he had been doing and saying. This was the idea. When I started collecting information about his life, I found that several people had written on him in Punjabi and in English, mostly in Punjabi. But more than that, there were other sources of information. Master Tara Singh himself had written a lot, written essays and books and novels, and that was in itself a considerable volume. And then I found that Master Tara Singh figures in the correspondence of national leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, like Sardar Patel, Rajendra Prasad, and to some extent
Jinnah.
Jinnah also. And if
Mahatma Gandhi, did you?
Mahatma Gandhi, in a way, I was coming to that. If we don't think of Master Tara Singh alone, but of the Akalis and the Sikhs in general, then the field becomes still wider. And Mahatma Gandhi would figure in a more prominent way than anyone else. So Mahatma Gandhi's view of Sikhs as a people, his view of Sikhism as a religion, all these become important, and they remain as an important factor in the situation when he is talking about or dealing with the Sikhs. Now, what have I done in the book is the most important question. I think I have tried to place Master Tara Singh, in the Indian context of these decades we are talking about, and my primary concern was to make his position clear in relation to the various problems developing from time to time, including the struggle for independence, which would be very important, in which he participated in a big way. And then the question of reorganization of states, and there again his old followers or supporters, they had different views, and Master Tara Singh was left alone. How he rebuilt himself, he rebuilt his leadership, creating a new following and pursuing what he thought was the best thing for the Sikhs to do, and thereby coming into conflict with Jawaharlal Nehru. So they developed a sort of personal hostility in due course. The interest of the book, I think, is throughout is to the Master Tara Singh responses to the given situations, which are changing with time. And so is Master Tara Singh changing in the way in which he would like to deal with them, but remaining faithful to some of his basic ideas. And one of the basic ideas clearly for him from the very beginning was that the Sikhs had an identity of their own.
Right.
So this was the basis of his politics, but this was not his creation. This was the creation of the Accolades. And the Accolades had sort of adopted it from the Singh Sabha movement. And I talked about the Singh Sabha movement when I referred to Baikan Singh Nabha and the controversy about Sikh identity. And then how I sort of look at the question as rather more complicated than simply a late 19th century debate. Because the issue of identity would arise with the founding of the new faith by Guru Nanak and founding of a new panth, which we left halfway last time when we talked about it. Guru Nanak is not only using the word Sikh, but he is talking of their association. He is talking of their activity. So for him, the following the fraternity has been established. This is in the compositions of Guru Nanak himself. And therefore the conjectures of historians like Harjot or MacLeod, they are not really relevant anymore because you have the original evidence of the compositions of Guru Nanak. And also we have the outline of the basic institutions. For example, the Granth Sahib. The basis of this would be the fact that Guru Nanak's own compositions were used for congregational worship. And the institution of Dharamsal, the place where there is a congregational worship of the Sikhs, that goes back to the time of Guru Nanak, and Langar was an integral part of that. So this is the most ancient, the first and foremost institution of the Sikhs, the Gurdwara. And you can see the importance of this institution throughout history and struggle about its control and everything connected with the Gurdwaras. They are still important. One simple point I wish to mention, the most important, Guru Nanak chose his successor in his lifetime, installed him on the Gaddi in his position. This gave rise to the idea that the position of the disciple and the Guru is interchangeable, and also that Guruship is a continuous phenomenon. This led ultimately to the idea that Guruship is eternal. And when the Guruship was came to an end so far as the persons were concerned, it was vested in the Granth and the Panth. So that as long as the Granth is there, as long as the Panth is there, the Guru is there. So this goes back to the time of Guru Nanak in that sense. So every important institution has its roots in the time of Guru Nanak. That is why he is important.
Quite.
I'm simplifying in order to make it clear.
It is. I think it's been made
The
very, very
subject
clear.
is more complex.
Right. So, was looking at this huge work and your continuing interest in scholarly pursuit of history, what I find equally remarkable is that you have also written for the common reader, the lay reader. And in fact, your Six of the Punjab was meant initially for the common reader, the lay reader. But then you have written for children, written on Maharaja Ranjit Singh, a short book for children, for the young, as you say, for the young reader. And you've written for school children, school textbooks. Uh, and you have also tried to incorporate the study of local monuments at school level. Do you think that this concern for the children, concern for the lay reader, uh, is partly arising out of your idea of commitment to history or commitment to society, or both?
It would be both in a sense because I think knowledge of history for anyone to have is helpful in several ways, not only personally but also socially, also as a member of a society. Also politically, you become more aware of the situation in which you are living. So the primary function for me, primary function of history is to enable you to understand yourself, your position in the society, and the position of other people in the society, and so that you get some idea where to go, in which direction to move. I subscribe to the idea that the past and the present and the future, they are sort of one continuity in spite of the changes. And it is important to know where we have come from, and also if we have some idea what kind of changes do we need or we would like to have, in which direction we would like to move. So this way the function of history to my mind is very important. It's not for merely a profession, merely one job, or something which entertains you, which interests you, but something which is needed by the society, which is essential for the society. This is how I look upon history.
You were at Amritsar in 1984. In fact, you were the vice.
1984.
Yes, and you were the vice chancellor from 1981 to 1984,
Right.
which were the most difficult years, one would say, as far as the impact of militancy is concerned. So, how did you function during that period, and how did you take the stresses of that time?
In the first place, I was not aware of all the implications which we know now. It was a serious situation, but I didn't realize to the extent that it really was. This was one part. Secondly, I felt that I was the head of an institution and I should serve as an example to my colleagues. And therefore, when they found me working even under stress, though they felt encouraged. And when they found that I attended to my duties as regularly as possible, that also made difference. When they found that I did not encourage any sort of rift among the colleagues, they appreciated that.
That is between Sikhs and Hindus, or?
In terms of Hindus and Sikhs, and
Mhm.
Sir, who are the historians with whom you have interacted very closely?
I look back to the days before I took up history, or why I took up history. Then Dr. Kaul I mentioned, that was one person who influenced my life in a way, in a big way, because the question of research and why going abroad was largely due to him. And also his general attitude, friendly towards those students who were serious. And he remained a lifelong sort of friend, though he was my teacher. And then
Professor Hardy,
Hani?
Professor Peter Hardy.
Peter Hardy was my supervisor. That was a formal relationship, but informally it was wonderful. As I mentioned earlier, he spent a lot of time, took a lot of interest, and remained interested in whatever I wrote later on. Professor Irfanvi, I have known since the 60s, and we respect each other. We differ in our views of history.
Okay. I think it's been a great privilege and a pleasure for us to have talked to you, and it's been a learning experience as ever.